afternoon and welcome to the first annual Baltimore Whole Life Expo and our lecture series. Your lecturer this afternoon is Dr. Daria Brezinski. I have to mention this first. She is no longer director of the Woodlands School as published in her bio, but she is the director of education for Westbrook University. She is presently developing a master's and PhD program in alternative education. She has a soon-to-be released book entitled Education in the 21st Century. She is responsible for the first holistic center in Philadelphia, as well as the first ecology store in the United States of America. She has been a guest on ABC, NBC, PBS, and numerous national television and radio programs. She maintains a private practice. She's a mother and has homeschooled all of her children. And as soon as she's done, we'll let her take the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Daria Brezinski.
Thank you. I started talking very quickly before you all came in. Yay! I have an email address here report. I have an email address up here for anybody who needs it. I am starting a master's PhD program in alternative education at Westbrook University. If you'd like to know about that, the papers are in the back on the table as you leave. I also have a business card if anybody needs it. What I want to talk to you about and spend 45 minutes doing, which is probably an hour lecture, an hour for the next month, is about education. I'm the lady who put your recycled paper towels and toilet paper on your shelf. That's what I did with my 6 children, besides for homeschooling them. I was telling people earlier, somebody just handed me an article yesterday. It's on the seduction of homeschooling families. The number one educational model prevalent in the United States right now and the fastest growing is homeschooling. That's because everybody's tired, disgusted, and fed up with the school system. The school system, does anybody know the history of education in the United States? Where it came from? It came from Catherine the Great. Do you know how far back that is? Some wonderful people in the United States decided to go over to Prussia at the turn of this past century, in the late 19th century, and discovered the system from Catherine the Great, who created it to create good soldiers. And that's why it was brought here. The system is absolutely essential that it be cut up and put into pieces, that you be trained to move with the sound of a bell so that you could learn to be obedient soldiers. And that's what the whole point of the system was. Prior to that time was the best, in my opinion, the best system in the world, which was the one-room schoolhouse. There weren't anybody there who was labeled, disabled, everything else. Children were looked at. They were all ages. Now, I'm going to go a little farther back here and talk about how we view children, because the first thing we have to do is we have to change our perception of how we see children. One of the greatest educators in the world who didn't play the game 100 years ago, 125 years ago, was Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner precipitated things like this Whole Life Expo, because he believed in holistic health and holistic education and teaching the whole child and not breaking them up into parts like we do today. And what happened was that he wouldn't play the game. He wouldn't be a part of the scientific community who said that you have to have test after test after test after test to determine what learning model was appropriate. And he wouldn't do that. He said because children are whole. They don't need to be broken up into parts. And the minute you start doing scientific studies, then the only way a scientific study is appropriate is if you focus on one particular thing. And of course, all the learning theories that we have in the United States come from the study of animals in boxes or cages. Isn't it appropriate that we have children in boxes and cages? In any event, my goal, and what I've been trying to do for the last 25 years, is to help you change your perception on how you see children. Children are not deficient. They are not born to be molded. They already are. And they are perfect. And they are whole. And they are holy. The words whole, perfect, and whole come from the same Old English background. Whole. And that's the way children are born. We just don't see them that way. And I'm not going to get into religious doctrine and things like that, but I will, my entire book, because you can't have an educational model without talking about science. And as we know today in the study of physics, anything that you observe in physics, in science, whatever you want to create in an experiment, you can. Whatever information you want to do, you can. So I just took all the scientific data in physics and science and learning theories and psychologists, and I put them together in my book to prove that children are whole. One of the things that I want you to take a look at, and we're going to do, it's, you know, at this time of the afternoon, everybody's just eaten, so I'm going to kind of get everybody moving along, you see, because experiencing for children is not about watching somebody give a lecture. It's about getting your whole body involved. And if you remember anything in your life, remember that getting your whole body involved is what this is all about. This is a whole life expo, you know, it's not about one thing up there. It's about a whole lot of things. So let's take, first of all, we're going to start with perception. I hope I get through a lot of this. If you have a coin, take a coin out of your pocket. Borrow one from a neighbor, whatever, a penny, nickel, quarter, whatever you have. And I want you to place it. We're going to move you around a little bit here because kind of gets boring after you sit here day after day listening to all of us lecturers. And I want you to take your object, coin. Don't do it yet. But you're going to put it at the end of your seat. Obviously, you're not going to sit in it. And I want you to put it right on the edge of your seat. And then when you do, I'm going to give you some instructions. Everybody ready? Okay, I want you to take your coin and I want you to put it at the end of your seat. Remember, this is, if anybody ever heard of the book Flatland, this is in the book Flatland. Now, that penny is sitting, or that quarter or coin or whatever is sitting on the edge of the seat. And I want you, ooh, very good. The quarter looks like it works out better on the edge of these seats. But I want you to get yourself positioned so that you are not seeing the coin, but under it. You are not seeing the coin, but you are under it. All right, does the coin exist? Yeah, it exists. You just don't see it, right? All right, now I want you to come up to a place where you see the penny or the coin as a dot. Situation in your body where you see the coin as a dot. Only as a dot. Very, very tiny dot. All right, now bring yourself up. That's not a dot. No. If you're seeing the whole thing, you're not seeing a dot. You're only seeing a tiny, teeny pinprick of a portion of it. All right, now I want you to bring yourself up a little bit farther until you see it as a line. Got it? All right, now I want you to come up a little bit higher until you see an arc. All right, now come up a little bit farther so you could see most of it. And then come up to the top and view it from the top. Now, what does that have to do with children? Have a seat. That is a little lesson about perception. You see, and it comes from, it's sort of a configuration of the book Flatland, which is a very, very old book. And what it is about is that perception is 99 and 9/10% of the way you see the world and children see the world. It all depends on where you are standing, sitting, or being. So you can't see everything. What makes any educator think that they know what is best for a child? when they don't know a background, where they came from or who they are? What makes a parent think that they know the blueprint of the direction their child should be? You're all here looking for yourselves. You're all in search of those parts of yourself that are missed because nobody knew to allow you to be. Nobody took the perception of looking at you from the top and saying, oh yeah, they're a whole sphere. You see, we make assumptions because we can't see things that they don't exist. Right now in the human brain and human development, we know this from scientific study. You know you have a right and a left brain, you know that? You know you have 3 brains besides for that. You know you have 5 brains? Does everybody know that? Okay, well you have a right and left brain that basically are the characteristics of masculine and feminine. Characteristics, not necessarily people. So one side of your brain determines your feminine characteristics and one your masculine. They're right up here at the top. Well, you also have 3 brains. One is the primal brain. The primal brain is the things that, and I can't go into this in a lot of depth in 45 minutes, but anyway, the primal brain is that which is your reptilian brain that connects you to everything that's happened before you. Billions and billions of generations. The next brain, which is the midbrain, or called the limbic system, is that which tells you about right and wrong, your conscience. And right now, this large brain right here, which is much bigger than all the others, it's called the forebrain, is what is happening right now in evolution. All the things you see upstairs, psychic awareness, all that, I was really lucky. I was born and raised in a family of psychics who never talked about it. My father was psychic. He could predict people who were going to die. He could smell roses around them. One day we were sitting up in the kitchen and my younger brother ran down the steps and said, "Mommy, Mommy, John Kennedy's dead." We turned on the television, nothing, for 3 days. The 3rd day, John Kennedy died. So I came from a family who my mother encouraged us all to learn about the other worlds. She said, everything exists if you can think about it. My mother never graduated from high school, but she had 4 children who are famous doctors. So her capacity and my father's capacity to allow us to explore helped us all to develop that 3rd brain. And believe me, I have gone way out there. Where you are right now, I had when I was a child. I've studied with psychic surgeons, Rolling Thunder, Sun Bear, you name it, I've been around. And it was because I knew where I wanted to go. I wanted to be with children. And I knew that the way I was educated wasn't the right way. There was something wrong about it. And what was wrong? And I wondered why all of my friends had 12 and 14 careers. It was because each one of you is searching for the parts of yourself that are missing. And it's all about developing this brain that does not even come close to being educated in the educational system today. What's happening in the world today is very, very scary, actually, from my perception, because the educational system focuses on this brain here. And because it does not vie for these 2, we have children who are sitting in front of televisions today. Ladies and gentlemen, you have absolutely no idea what technology is doing to the children of today. I went to a conference in California with 20 of the greatest minds in the world, and it scared the living daylights out of me because they all know about the brain and development. The television and the computer before the age of 12 introduced to a child bypasses the limbic system of the brain, that middle section of the brain there. When you bypass the limbic system of the brain, that is the conscience. Any child watching television or dealing with a computer and computer games before the age of 12, who has not developed that limbic system, sees everything that they saw in the two-dimensional reality as real. And I mean real. You and I think and know that those things are not real. A child does not. I noticed that New York Times and several other Newsweek have had articles on children without a conscience, the generations of children without a conscience, and ladies and gentlemen, this is why. Our schools are notorious for introducing things that have absolutely no scientific fact behind them, because major corporations give them lots of money to put things. I'll give you an interesting example, and I can give you thousands of them. In the early 1950s, actually late 1940s, early 1950s, the Dairy and Cattlemen's Association decided that they needed more money. So they put aside $1 million, which was a lot of money in those days, and they went to the superintendent of schools and the Department of Education. Said they had a program that they'd like to introduce to the schools. They'd give all the schools free literature, bulletin boards, books. Anybody who's been in the school in the early 1950s will remember this. In order to create consumers, they have to reach children at a very young age. And so they created the food tree that said you have to have 3 glasses of milk a day, that said you have to eat meat 3 times a day, that said you have to eat eggs. Anybody remember? It was right in the little right-hand corner of those posters we had all over. No scientific fact whatsoever throughout the food chain that we had, which said legumes, grains. Ladies and gentlemen, that $1 million marketing scheme led to gazillions. It led to children drinking out of bottles. It led to the pacifier. It led to the hardening of the arteries. It led to why you're into holistic health today, because you are the product, you are the consumers that were raised believing that you need to eat meat and drink 3 glasses of milk. I am a vegan and have been for the last 25 years. All my children were raised vegans. You don't need milk or dairy products. But you learned it in school. Today, what do we have? We have computers in school now. Why do we have computers in school? Because all those computer companies are making huge donations to the educational systems that can't handle all of the influx of what's going on today. So they donate. They want lifetime consumers, ladies and gentlemen, so they put things in the schools. My children, each one of them decided at one point in their lives, when they were teenagers, that they wanted to try out the school system. I won't tell you all the horror stories. My son came home from his first week in health class and said, "You're not going to believe what they teach you. Am I going to die because I'm not drinking 3 glasses of milk a day and eating meat? I've never had meat before." Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, but our schools are no longer safe. My son, 15 years old, decided he was going to go to school, see what public school was like. And when my children make a commitment, I make them make a commitment for an entire year. First week of school, on a Friday, he went into a library. Kids told him that they were working on a project and that he needed to lick the stamps to put on the envelopes. Now, I taught my children a lot, but I never knew this was still around. And this happened a year ago. And my 15-year-old son licked a stamp, and we thought he was going to die because he went into convulsions because somebody had put 12 hits of LSD on that stamp. We had no idea what was happening to him, and neither did he. And I have more horror stories to tell, but I won't. Needless to say, none of my children ever wanted to go to high school again or public school. We need to really rethink what we're doing to our children by putting them in schools. Your children do not need socialization before they are 12. They do not need to be in school, even for an only child. You children learn socialization, and this is the reason why you're having problems today. Children need socialization skills from the family. That's where the foundation comes. They learn relationship. They learn cause and effect. They learn to stick things out from their parents, from the people who they have to see day to day and who have to deal with the problems day to day. Schools are artificial. There is no cause and effect. If you do something wrong, you are not punished. There is no cause and effect. And what is the punishment in schools? Let's give them a week off. That's punishment, to go sit in front of the TV or roam the streets? That's not punishment. I don't mean to get you down here, so I want to kind of move you out of this space here about all the horror stories. And let's go back to perception again, because you're learning a lot about perception with all this today in the Whole Life Expo. See, everything is about perception and the way you see things. Because you've been taught in terms of parts, you can't see the whole thing. Wouldn't it be great if you walked into a store and you were looking for a hammer and you could stand on the ceiling to find the aisle? Well, that's what my books will be teaching you to do. It'll be teaching you to be able to see with perception that's whole. The areas of perception are the senses and stillness and motion. So we have eyes, ears, nose, mouth, or seeing, hearing, feeling. Those senses are not just your senses. In my book, I give a lot of examples on how to see with your senses. I'm going to give you one right now. If you go in front of a mirror tonight, light a candle. You've heard a lot about your aura, I'm sure. If you light a candle in a dark room and look at yourself in the mirror, eventually you'll be able to train yourself to see your aura. You know from Deepak Chopra and everybody else that everything in this universe is about vibration. Vibration is the word. It's what began. At the molecular level, when you look all the way down, and they've gone down and down and down and smashed things against, 5-mile-long walls. And what they found was there is nothing that there is nothing. There's always something. And that something is always light. And beyond the light, what starts the light is vibration. Now, vibration is in everything. It's in every symbol we have, and the symbols we have. We start with vibration, then there's color. Then from color, we move to music or harmony. Music, sound. Then from music, we go to number, because music is the vibration, is a number. Then we go to forms. Triangle, square. And after we go to forms, then we come to the word. You can read these all in my book. Let's see, does anybody have anything on here? Let me see. Oh, nobody has anything on. Let me see. I'm trying to find something that we could all perceive here. I was going to wear one and I forgot. All right, let's take a word then. Oh, thank you. Could you take off your necklace, please? Oh, actually, can I have yours? That's the one. What is this? Anybody? Cross. What does it mean? Unity. Love. Salvation. Sacrifice. There's a whole range of difference between sacrifice and love. Redemption. Now, I'm talking about one little symbol here. Okay? Every one of you has a different perception of what you see here. How many people know where this came from? You all think it came from Christ on the cross, don't you? You know how far back this symbol goes? I studied symbols besides for physics. This symbol comes from this. And my dress is falling apart as I talk. And that symbol is how vibration moves. All right? Now, within that symbol, you see this. Within that symbol, you see this. Within that symbol, you see this and this. Within that symbol, you see this, because this makes up this. And within this is where it all starts. So we start from the dot. The dot is equal to the vibration. The dot moves to the line. This line means the energy that goes from God to earth. This energy is earth energy. This is the masculine, this is the feminine. When they cross, you can read all this in my book. When they cross, that creates form in man. This is ancient, ancient, ancient truths that have been unearthed from 10,000 years ago. Our symbols are very, very spiritual, but we have no idea what they mean. And every day you are looking at symbols that have a vibration, because all these symbols have a vibration because they're number. And number goes back to vibration, goes back to light. So everything, all right, let's take another thing. So every time you look at this, you are looking at unconscious communication that is happening to you without you ever knowing it. All right, now, let's take the word love. What does love mean? Anybody? Yell out. What? Feelings. Acceptance. Caring. Confidence. Sharing. Roses. Beauty. Giving. Intimate. Receive, okay. When somebody says, I love you, what do they mean? You have no idea. When somebody says, I see you, you have no idea what they mean. When you say to a child, put your name on the right-hand corner of the page, they have no idea what you are talking about. Do you want it a half an inch from the top, half an inch from the side? Do you want it? Our children daily are perplexed because words have so many meanings. We just took one, put them all together, and what happens? And then put body language or intonation behind it. I see you. I see you. And we wonder why our children are so confused. You see, language is no longer an efficient form of communication any more than symbols are or numbers are, because we've forgotten what the real meaning of all those things are. If you were around in Plato's time or Aristotle's time, when you went to school, you had to learn 4 subjects: music, geometry, number, and nature. Those were the subjects. If you were around in the one-room schoolhouse, you would be studying about everything. in the first grade reader in the one-room schoolhouse, which I had the privilege of having, the McGuffey reader, first grade reader, equivalent today to an 8th grade reader. You know what? There weren't any LD kids, ADD kids. There weren't any of those kids. You know why? Because the federal government didn't spend $60,000 per child in those days for anybody who was deemed handicapped. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the reason that we have so many handicapped children in the United States today is because the United States government gives $6,000 for every quote-unquote normal child in your school and gives $60,000 for every handicapped child you have in your school. So, what are we inclined to do? And if your child is termed ADD, ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing. I have interviewed physicians and said to them, excuse me, can you please tell me what ADD is and what is the prescription for them? And they'll say, you know, Daria, you're an educator. You know more about that than I do. Why don't you tell me? Teachers are making prescriptions for children. I spend a lot of time in schools with going with parents into where their children are, quote unquote, the problems of the school. And I get in there and it's the 2 parents, me, and 12 teachers, psychologists, and everybody else. It's called the intimidation process. Ladies and gentlemen, in the United States today, I know you're not going to believe this, children between 13 and 18 today, 65% are on prescription drugs like Prozac. 65%. That is more than the entire population of the United States from 18 up. The entire adult population does not have as many people on prescription drugs as the children from 13 to 18. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a culture of children who are all on drugs because of the schools. And why? You know, if you went into a factory, and we have an uneducated factory worker here who is watching on the assembly line as the things go by, and all of a sudden the product starts coming out wrong. You know, does our person on the assembly line go, oh my God, we got to fix the product? It's time to fix the machine, not the product. But what do you do when you get into schools? They say, you are the problem. Your children are the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been in meetings with parents who have been humiliated, who have been told that they have to spend thousands of dollars on psychological testing, all kinds of testing because their child is the problem, not the school. Children who come out with IQs of over 165 who are smarter than their teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, when we look at wholeness, it is not about teachers. It is not about administrators. I'm a teacher. It's not about that. Take a look at your watch. Your watch is a combination of glass, metal, little screw device, little hand. It's got numbers on it. There's a bunch of little tiny pieces inside. If we took that watch apart and spread it across the table, we'd have a bunch of little pieces. Metal, glass. But when we put it together, it is much, much more than the little pieces. It is a leap in consciousness. It's something intangible. It's called telling time. It has nothing to do with the parts. But the parts together make something much more, and this is what consciousness is all about. Education is not about the teachers and the administrators anymore. I interviewed hundreds of daycare teachers who receive minimum wage, who do not get paid holidays or sick days, who because of state laws get laid off their jobs or sent home early because the number of students goes down, the ratio goes down. See, owners of daycares play little games with the numbers. And I said to them, why are you here? You don't even make $300 a week. Why are you so dedicated? And they say, because we love children. And I ask educators, why are you in this? It's because they love children and they want to make a difference. And they know they make a difference. And teachers do make a difference. They made a difference in my life and they made a difference in yours. It's not about teachers anymore, and it's not about administrators anymore. It's about something much more, and that's the system. And there's only one way to change it. I've tried for 25 years to change the laws in the United States. I came from a political background. I know how to do it. No way. The only way to do it is to get it from the outside. And I thought by going across the country and telling everybody to homeschool their children that I had the answer. But you see this article that these people gave me yesterday? Turns out the government figured out a way to get the homeschooling parents too. You see, they offer them free things. Come on in. Use our facilities. Use our textbooks. That way we can find out who you are in the community. See, they don't know who's in their community. That way they can get money because even if you're homeschooling, you're using the facility. Then they start enacting laws in the state of Virginia. We now have a law. Homeschooling children have to be inoculated. Last year. I didn't hear that. And what's happening is the obvious reason is they lose their money if they lose the children. So we have to do something even more now. In my master's PhD program, you see, I thought about this for the last 5 years. How am I going to start a school if I don't want people who have been already ingrained in the system? Well, there's only one way. You see, we get everybody in the United States to get their certification from their own state. Okay? Then they come to Westbrook University in my master's program and they get untrained so they can be teachers. Then they get the PhD from Westbrook and they can become the administrators. We can completely unchange them. And that's the only way I can do it right now because I can't change the laws. You see, age has nothing to do with learning. The fact that the children are in the classroom at 3 and 4, 5 and 6, the repetition that a child has, scientifically proven in work study, learning tests by famous psychologists. The more repetition you have, the less likely you are to learn. Serious. Latest statistics. So here we are putting children in daycares day in, day out, doing the same things day in, day out. By the time they are 6 years old, they are so bored, they don't know what to do, so they get in trouble. What do we do in schools? You see, now that we got all the funding for all the kids at the bottom, what have you learned in the Whole Life Expo? Whatever your focus is what you get. So the more we focus on the bottom, the more bottom we're going to get. So what happens to all those kids at the top who are brilliant? They have to still do the same math problems every year after year after year. Even if they caught it the first time, they still have to do it year after year after year. So we're losing all the bright kids, and they're the ones who are getting in trouble. And the only thing we can do is to change things at the grassroots level. I believe in community schools. I believe it's time parents started getting together and started voicing their opinion. Children do not need to go to school. They do not need to go to school. In a 1-week period, the teacher spends 5 minutes with your child. 5 minutes. That's it. That's all they have time for. There's no time for anything else. They're so bogged down with curriculum. There is no reason why there is a timed school. Ask yourself when you learn the best. Sit down and just think about it logically. When do you learn best? You learn when you're actively involved. When you're doing something. When there's no time element. I take a class, I have to keep myself at this level. So I have been taking a class in community college and a couple of different colleges. And what I've discovered is there's everywhere from a 15-year-old to 60-year-olds in the classroom. What does age have to do with learning? Nothing. There are 3-year-olds who can walk and talk. There are 3-year-olds who don't say a thing and haven't moved. That's okay too. Actually, that's better. And everything you've ever heard about socialization, they can learn at home from their family. It is time to get back to grassroots. We have been moving away from it for far too long. The family is the place to be, and that's where children need to be. This is a perfect example. You know, in Japan, if you were in a restaurant in Japan, do you know what happens to a crying child in Japan? Everybody runs to that child. From the owner of the restaurant to the patrons, and everybody goes to comfort that child. What happens in the United States? God, get them out of here. Stick a pacifier in their mouth. People don't believe this is a child-unfriendly society. It's because you see, you're over here. I was talking to him before. He said that the workshops that are visited the most are the ones that talk about trying to get in touch with your child. Listen to that. Listen to that. Why? We do not value children. That's why. We do not value childhood. You know, we talk about genocide and the horrors of, ancient civilizations who threw their children off of mountaintops for sacrifices, and boy, aren't we doing it today. Stand in the line in the grocery store and watch the parents beat their kids. Stand at a bus stop and listen to what goes on. I listen all the time. I've been known to get out of my car and watching somebody at a bus stop in the middle of Philadelphia. I know this sounds insane. A mother was beating up her kid, and I got out of my car, stopped my car, and said, "Lady, I'm going to have you arrested if you don't stop that." Talk about shock. But nobody stands up anymore. Nobody stands up. It's because you've become so apathetic with that boob tube that you think that this is the way things should be. And it shouldn't be. We have got to make children our focus. We have got to see them as whole. When they are born on this planet, what you are looking for is your wholeness. You were born with it. Look at the face of a child and don't tell me they are not holy, whole, and pure. You know what happens? It's like being an astronaut in a spaceship. You see, they've got to adjust and get focused into this planet with our perceptions in order to survive here. But they're whole. What we need to do is get to their place. For unless ye be as little children. I have volumes of things kids say. I was sitting at a table with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. We were talking about life. And a little boy said to me, "Life is like a pencil." I said, "How's life like a pencil?" It's a 3-year-old. You sharpen it, it gets dull. 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 Sharpen it, it gets dull. Poof, it's gone. 3-year-old. I'm afraid I can't, we're down to the last minute here. I got so much to say. If nothing else, what I hope you leave today with is that wherever you see a child, see them differently. Look into their eyes. Their eyes are the windows of the soul. They are whole, and they have something to teach you. Don't try to put them in a mold. And from now on, think of children very, very differently. Think of them as your teacher, not you imposing our belief systems on them. I travel around the country lecturing, and I take this message everywhere I go, in the hopes that in the very near future, I will be starting schools around the United States where there are no times, where there is no age, where children are whole. And we again see them as that. The worst thing that happened in this world is in the 18th century, when we stopped counting from the number 1 and we started counting with the number 0. Because at that time we saw the world as nothing instead of 1. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll come in the back because is there somebody in here after me? Okay, anybody have any questions? Yeah.
When you talked about children learning socialization at home with the family, there are a lot of kids out there that don't have a family that can teach them that because of alcoholism or drug addiction or a lot of other things. What about those?
Well, I can't make generalizations right now, but I can tell you that even in that circumstance, they're better off. You have to understand something right now. Most of the children, half of the children in this world born in the United States are born of drug addicts, alcoholics, or somebody who's been on drugs. We have damaged children right now. To put them into school situations is damaging them even more.